Welcome to this episode of Best Recipes with Sharon. Today I'm actually making two of my favorite peach pie recipes. Now the first one is a baked peach pie, one that I tweaked the ingredients until I got it just right. It can be served both warm or cold, but you can't beat a warm and pleasantly sweet homemade peach pie with a scoop of vanilla ice cream on the side. Now the second recipe has a non-baked pie filling made with ripe raw peaches and topped with whipped cream. This peach pie has a sweet and fresh flavor that is light and refreshing, especially good when fresh peaches are in season. Now let's get started. The baked peach pie has a double crust, so using my flaky pie crust recipe, I'm just rolling out a bottom and a top to have ready for this pie. Now you're going to need to have about 4.5 cups of peaches, peeled and cut in chunks. Now I cut these chunks into a bowl that's big enough that I can mix in. So I'm just going to start by adding 1 cup of sugar, 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, now 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, just 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1/4 of a teaspoon of almond extract, now 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Now we're going to mix that all together and keep mixing until it's really well combined. Now you'll pour the peaches into an unbaked pie shell. Now I'm adding chunks of butter on the top. Now you'll put a top on the pie. This is my flaky pie crust recipe that I'm using for this pie. So you'll trim the edges, pinch up the sides, do whatever design you want on the top. I'm just going to make a little flowers on the top. Now in a separate little dish, you'll crack an egg and add a little water to it to do an egg wash on top. Now just sprinkle a little sugar on top of that egg wash. Alright, it's ready to go in the oven. So you'll have the oven preheated to 425 degrees. You'll leave it in at that temperature for about 10 minutes. Then you'll reduce the heat to 375 for the rest of the cooking time, which will be around 40 to 45 minutes. Each oven is different, so you need to keep checking it. Now this looks like it's done. It's nice and golden on top. I'm going to let it cool off a little bit and we'll cut this pie and serve. Alright, look at this. It's baked perfectly. Now this is what I'm talking about. You take a piece, put it on a plate, add a scoop of ice cream, and boy, this is good. Now on to the second recipe. This is the simple fresh peach pie. Now once again, using my flaky pie crust recipe, I'm going to roll out enough dough to do just a bottom shell. After you've poked holes in the bottom and pinched up the edges, put your pie weights in. Put it in the oven for about maybe 8 minutes, so you'll have your oven preheated to 425 degrees. Meanwhile, we'll prepare the egg wash. This egg wash is done a little bit differently. It's just with 1 egg and a little bit of milk. So you'll remove the pie crust at about 8 minutes, a little on the early side, and paint it with the egg wash. Put it back in the oven for another 3 or 4 minutes. This helps to seal the bottom of the pie so that the pie crust doesn't go soggy. Now just pouring some boiling water over the peaches makes them easier to peel. Now once again, just cutting the peaches in chunks. So you'll need about 5 cups of chopped peaches. Now with this pie, you're going to need to have peaches that are really fresh and really ripe. Now you'll take 2 cups of those peaches and put them into a pot on the stove. So you're just going to mash them until they're into smaller chunks. Now I'm adding 3/4 of a cup of sugar to that. Also add 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. Now I'm stirring that together a bit. I'm going to add 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Now 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And finally 1/4 of a teaspoon of almond extract. Now continue stirring at a medium heat until it thickens into a paste. Now this will happen fairly quickly. You can see here it's starting to thicken up already. Now add the remaining 3 cups of fresh peaches to the paste. Now stir that all together thoroughly. Now you just add it to the baked pie shell. Now for the whipped cream. I pour about 2 cups of whipped cream into a bowl and whip it until it's stiff. Once the whipped cream is stiff, then I start adding some icing sugar. Now, it can be anywhere between 1/2 cup to a cup of icing sugar. That totally depends on how sweet you like it to be. Now I'm going to add that whipped cream on top of the pie. It helps to let this pie set in the fridge for an hour or 2. Then when you go ahead and cut it, it'll stay together a little bit better. There it is, a fresh peach pie with whipped cream, a fresh peach on top, and served cold.